Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucy, and I would like to welcome you to the webinar on managing your condo. This is the third and last in the series, so welcome back to those of you who've been following this, and welcome to newcomers. We'll get started in just a few seconds. I just want to go over a few items first. So for the best experience with so many people joining us this evening, we recommend that you disconnect from VPN and close any unnecessary applications. We also ask that you keep yourself on mute so that we don't disturb the speaker while he's giving the presentation. There will be a short question period at the end of the session, so we ask that you type your questions in the chat, and we'll monitor them and get to them at the end. Finally, I would also like to let you know that this session is being recorded, and you will receive the recording as well as a copy of the presentation. And now a few words about the Chambre. First, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the Chambre de Notaire for their support and for making this webinar possible, contributing to the excellence of notarial practice, encouraging the continuous development of the law, and promoting access to preventive justice are all missions of the Chambre de Notaire that drive its overarching objective of protecting the public. Legal advisors focused on conciliation. With so much information available out there, notaries are key public officers who can help the public understand what they need to know, make the best decisions, protect their patrimony, and ensure that their wishes are known and respected. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for this evening, Kevork Meterisian. Kevork is an accomplished property management executive with over 30 years experience, having worked for notable companies such as Canderel, Alexis Neon, Metcalf Living, Cromwell, and Codgier. He's currently the Senior Director of Operations at Group MAC. During his career, Kevork has managed several landmark properties in Montreal, including the iconic Olympic Village, Nordelec, Place Alexis Neon, and as Vice President, he's sorry about that. He is actively involved in various professional associations representing the different sectors in the industry, including the Quebec chapter of Building Owners and Managers Association, also known as BOMA, and has served on its board of directors as well as La Corporation des Propriétaires d'Immeubles du Québec. Kevork has been a guest speaker at several industry conferences across Canada and has been an instructor of the Real Property Administrator RPA designation program offered by BOMA International. And now, Kevork, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. Today, I will be addressing the impact of management on the value of your condominium and how we can make it grow and prosper for you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the amazing team at McGill School of Continuing Studies, and in particular, the Director of Professional and Corporate Education, Ina Popova-Rush, and Lucy Brunetti, Program Manager, for organizing this event. At the very start, I'd like to say that we have a couple of things in common. Firstly, we are all passionate by real estate, and particularly condominiums. And secondly, we all want to prosper and do well with our real estate. And so, having said that, I'd like to just go over the agenda very quickly and what we're going to be talking about. Firstly, I'm going to give you a bit of a portrait of the Montreal condo market as it is evolving right now, and certain statistics that we might find dull, but quite relative. I will talk to the differences between renting versus buying, the advantages of one versus the other. Although very, very candidly, I don't want you to repeat this to any of your renters. I'm going to also address risks involved in buying a condo, quite important because we are all either looking to buy or have condos currently. I will address as well buying a condo from an existing owner, and we'll also talk to buying a condo from a developer builder, which is a bit different than from an existing owner. And of course, I will finally discuss the importance of the management element in the day-to-day of your condominium and in preserving its value. Just as a preamble to the discussions, condominiums have become very, very popular, as much with the younger crowd, couples, as much as the empty nesters that are looking to get rid of their homes and move into a condo lifestyle where they have no more chores to take care of, but their apartment. And so I think it's quite an interesting area that we are going to focus on. And why don't we begin? I just wanted to reflect on a couple of thoughts and a couple of inspirational quotes that I found when doing a bit of research for this topic. And surprisingly, right in the depth of the Depression, the 32nd president of the United States, Franklin D Roosevelt, who was also president during World War II, is quoted to say, "Real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care, it is about the safest investment in the world." This isn't anything new to all of us, as we know, but when we hear it from someone like Franklin D. Roosevelt, it certainly rings a bell. But if you notice in his quote, what does he also say? Managed with reasonable care. And that is what today's webinar will discuss. Let me move on to an earlier individual industrialist in the mid-1835, where Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest Americans, was quoted to say, much before Franklin D. Roosevelt, that 90% of all millionaires, and among them himself, became so through owning real estate. Again, nothing new, but a fact. And finally, if we look at in this day and age, and we refer to a quote from Kathy Fettge, co-founder and co-CEO of Real Wealth, she says simply, the bottom line, investing in real estate is smart because property is tangible. People always have and always will need shelter. This means it is very unlikely that our need for shelter, whether it be buying or renting homes, will ever go away. And often we question ourselves and we say, why residential real estate? Why condos? Well, we may stop working and work from home as we did during the COVID crisis, but we will always need a place to live in. And so I truly believe that residential real estate is a very potent investment for all of us. Just a few statistics, and quite notable, in fact. According to the Montreal Housing Market Report, during Q1 of 2021, we are talking of this year, the average sold prices of homes reached $514,000, which is roughly a 27% annual increase year to year. Okay, in a year where we have COVID, over $500,000, the average selling price of real estate. And despite the COVID restrictions, number of transactions that increased quite moderately, but again, hit an 8% year over year. The median single family detached prices increased by 32% year over year to $481,000. Again, we're looking at close to $500,000 to buy a dwelling. And the median condo prices, you would think, they also increased by 21% year over year to roughly $350,000. Again, the most affordable real estate we can buy among all the others that we have available in the market. And finally, just for your own statistics, the median prices for plexes increased by 8%, again, year over year to $660,000. So as you can see, investing in condos is still affordable as in relation to other properties. And I will also tell you some of the reasons why some people are perhaps made out for condos as opposed to plexes. So roughly the condo medium sold price, as we said, was $347 or roughly $350,000 in Q1 of 2021, a monthly change of 2% in value, quarterly of 7 and annual 21. How much could your money get you today if you were to deposit it in a bank account or in a term deposit? Nowhere near 1%. And the number of condos bought and sold in Q1 2021, 2,620. Could you imagine? That's how many condos changed hands, either from owners or from developers. Again, a monthly change increase of 27%, quarterly of 62, an annual change of 26%. So just to give you an idea of what's happening in the market in regard to this important asset that we have, which are called condominiums. So a lot of people, however, choose to rent, and that's fair enough, no problems with that. I know I have a lot of friends who have rented all their lives, and they've been very happy doing so. Of course, there is no initial investment required in renting. You know, you move into an apartment and then you decide to move out and move into another. Your monthly rent is fixed, obviously, without any surprises, other than minimal annual increases, which you can sometimes, you know, contest in front of the regime, if you so wish. You can use your capital to spend as you like, as opposed to investing in real estate, or you can invest it elsewhere. And of course, there are no headaches to maintain your property, as we often have when we're buying a plex or, you know, an apartment building where, you know, in most cases, they're of a certain age with all kinds of problems that we have to deal with. So fair enough, a number of people will rent and they will continue renting, and thank God they will rent. Why? Because some of us in this audience are buying condos as investors and renters. And so we need these people to rent from us, right? So we'll let them do that and we'll keep our properties for ourselves. Of course, there are advantages of buying. And as I said earlier, let's not share this with renters because we need those people as our clients. Naturally, as you're paying your monthly mortgage payments, a good chunk of that goes to pay down your capital. And thus, not to forget, you are building equity over the years. And this is money right into your pocket, okay? As opposed to renting. When you're renting, the money goes 100% to the owner of the property. Inflation comes to further increase the value of your property, you know, and that adds more money into your pocket. You could use the added value of your property over time to leverage it and acquire yet another property or other properties that you can then decide to rent, and ultimately, over time, build a nice little portfolio, a nest egg for your retirement. And why not? And finally, or among some of the issues that give us an advantage in buying as opposed to renting, your added value on your property that you will build over time can also be used for other things that you may want to do. You may want to use it for travel. You may want to use it for all kinds of other things that please you. Naturally, the added financing, you'll have to be able to afford it and pay for it through added revenues from your rentals or from other sources. And naturally, you would own real estate. as I mentioned earlier, and the quotations I gave you, the most valued asset that we can have and that we can help ourselves to prosper with. So we can buy condos naturally from an existing owner, a co-owner who may want to sell his condo to move on to another, or perhaps sometimes some people would sell to just free their money and do other things with it. And so there are certain elements that have to be followed when you're buying a condo from an existing owner. And I'm sure some of you know all these, but let's review them again. First of all, you must review the market comparables. Sales like for like, current listings that are currently for sale on the market, and to see how the property you're buying matches those prices. And also go back 2-3 years and check out what kind of sales were completed and at what prices. So you can see a bit the evolution of prices and see how the price that you're paying for your condominium compares to that. Naturally, to get these numbers, you need to have a very good friend that is a broker or an agent who can provide you all of these statistics. You have to also review the market comparable rentals for your type of unit, okay? Very, very important. Even if you're not planning to rent your unit for now, it's good to know that if you were to have to rent your unit for whatever reason, that you'd be able to rent it and what you'd be able to get or fetch on the market for your unit. Because don't forget, as I will mention later, there are certain holding costs that you have to be able to cover if you decide to acquire a property, whether to live in or to rent. Of course, when you're buying an existing condominium, you must, and I stress this, and I do this myself, review the minutes of the syndicate's annual and special assemblies. Minimum past 3 years. You'd be surprised some of the things you will discover from just reading those minutes. You know, you will see obviously the financial statements, how they've evolved, how they're doing financially. Have they been able to make budget? Have they surpassed budget? Were there special assessments that were requested of the co-owners? What kind of escalations have been applied to condo fees? You know, there's also the health of your reserve fund, the fund that the building has in order to upkeep the property. How healthy is that reserve fund? Because not to forget, if your reserve fund is not healthy and is not on target, and there are major repairs that are required in the building, guess what? You will be asked to do a special contribution among all the other co-owners and pay up the bill. But the minutes will also tell you a little bit about the general mood of the co-owners. How are they? How is the mood of this syndicate? Is it really a nice place that you'd like to live in? Are there too many conflicts? Are there too many issues that you don't necessarily want to get involved in? You know, and when you look at these issues and you look at all the various elements that you're going to read, always keep in mind the financial impact of all these issues. Because at the end of the day, you know, they're all going to be quantified in dollars and cents, and you're going to have to pay for it. Also, I usually review the Condo Act. I go through it meticulously and I read the building rules and regulations and see a little bit of what are various elements of the Condo Act that can impact me as an owner resident or as an owner investor, and the various rules and regulations as well. Very, very important. because that's what really provides the mood for the co-owners to live in a harmonious, environment. Now, if the building that you're buying into is less than 5 years old, you have to check to see if an external audit has been done. Very, very, very important. Okay? And has the developer builder been held responsible for deficiencies? Because don't forget, once the building is delivered to the co-owners, there is a 5-year warranty to which the builder developer is responsible. And so it behooves upon the syndicate to go out and get an expertise report within that 5-year window and make sure that it's brought forth to the developer builder in a legal manner to hold them responsible and make sure that those deficiencies get fixed up ASAP and that they pay for them. Now, I've been in a situation where the administration essentially forgot to do that. And what happened is we all had to dish out $4,000, each of us, to cover the various costs of issues that we were having in the building because of these deficiencies. And so very, very important that once you look at all these records, you also request this information. And if you do buy a condominium in such a building and it hasn't yet been 5 years, you have to make sure that you bring it up at the General Assembly meeting and request that such an audit be conducted as soon as possible. Also, when you're buying from an existing owner, you've got to see if the building has a life cycle schedule of planned, anticipated costs over the next 30 years or so. And does the reserve fund currently reflect the monies that should be available for such repairs? Let me give you an example. For instance, in a building, we have all kinds of systems to allow us for the building to operate, whether it be elevators, whether it be windows, doors, roofs, building envelope, any of all these things, concrete, in indoor garages, anything and everything that ages with time has a life cycle cost. And that cost has to be captured in a planned schedule so that we would know that in any given year, these are the costs that are anticipated to occur and that we have enough monies in our reserve fund to pay for such costs. Naturally, there's also going to be unanticipated costs that may occur, but then again, in some instances, insurances will cover such costs. But if we have a plan prepared by a qualified engineering firm, that will ensure that your reserve fund is adequate every year over the course of the next 30 or so years. Next thing you got to look at is, does the unit have the new owner's warranty? And if it does, is it transferable? This is very important as well, because you're buying into an existing unit and you want to make sure what you're getting into. Naturally, it's always best to have the unit inspected by a professional inspector and see that everything is honky-dory. But another thing that you should look at, very important, because this also impacts the value of the property and the cost that you're paying for it, is, does the unit or has it been modernized or renovated over the years? Or has little money been spent and we need to put it to par so that it could, be able to be comparable to similar condominiums, either in the building or in the vicinity. Now that cost, which you will have to evaluate, should be added to the cost of the condo that you're buying, because you're not really buying it at $300,000 if there is another $30,000 or $40,000 to renovate the kitchen and the washrooms and whatnot. That should also be taken into consideration. Another thing that you should also look at is, has there been any major damages to the building in the last 5 years, or even 3 years for that matter? And is the building properly insured? So important today. You know, insurance and damages in buildings, and especially condominium buildings, is rampant because a lot of people are buying into these buildings, and for the most, it's their first time living in an apartment environment. I've seen people, you know, put hangers with clothes on sprinkler heads in a unit and damaging sprinklers and causing water floods. It's the biggest issue that we have in condominiums today is that people, co-owners, residents, are not aware of the fundamentals of living in a community and in an apartment, and some of the do's and nots. And these are the kind of things that your syndicate and the qualified property management firm must keep the residents informed of. And it's good that you look at through these minutes of meetings and see what has transpired in the building, the kind of people that are living in it. Is it the kind of place you want to be, right? You should also note that the holding costs of a condominium is what you're going to have to pay at the end of the day, whether you're an owner occupant or whether you're an owner investor renter. This is money that's out of your pocket. And this would include naturally your mortgage payments, your condo fees, your taxes, and your insurance. You know, the mortgage depends on how much cash you're going to put down naturally. And with the interest rates today, it's quite inviting for people to buy property and take as much mortgage as they can. And I suggest that you all take long-term mortgages, minimum 5 years. I'm very conservative. I don't go with open mortgages. Your condo fees, don't think that even if it's an existing building, that this year they're paying 40 cents a square foot per month, that it's going to stay that way. Look at the evolution of the condo fees, as I mentioned earlier, and anticipate that it's going to increase at that frequency. And so when you're buying in, don't put conservative numbers, put real and realistic numbers so you know what you're really getting into. And for your taxes, naturally, you'll know what they're paying in taxes, and that's probably going to increase by inflation. And not to forget the insurance that you're going to pay, either as a condo owner for liability insurance, theft liability, or as a renter, as an investor renter, where you have to also carry insurance in addition to what your renter will have to provide you as well, which is stipulated in the Condo Act, proof of insurance. And of course, all these costs that you're going to have to pay for should not exceed 30% of your gross household income. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. You're going to have difficulty paying. And these are very, very important elements to consider. I want to address a little bit about management. And a well-managed building will definitely maintain the asset's value and grow it by keeping costs to the absolute minimum, yet providing the level of service of the class of condominium that you are buying into. Your condo fees have to be maintained. Otherwise, people will shy away from looking at buying your condo. Today, you look at some of the properties that are sold in Laval, where, you know, condo fees are 600, 700, or downtown Montreal. It's ludicrous paying those kind of monies, and they only are going northward. You know, so a well-managed building has a lot to offer to current and prospective buyers. And it's an absolute attribute when you're reselling your property where you'd like to make a capital gain on it. If your property is badly managed and there are issues, mark my word, no one will want to get into that property. So when you're buying from an existing owner, take note of those things. Look at also how the syndicate is managed. Who is managing the syndicate? Are these all amateurs, solely elected administrators that they think they know it all, yet they're really not from the field? Or is it a combined management of people that are coming from different walks of life with different expertises that come to complement one another in the kind of work that's required of an administration board with an outside professional management firm? It's important that you look at those elements from a management perspective. You know, 33 years ago when I bought my first condo, it was being managed by co-owners, you know, who were just learning on the job, doing the best they can. They were all very, very kind people, good intentioned, but you can only do so much with what you know. And they were learning on the job, and guess what? At the co-owner's cost. And so it's important that you look at the qualifications of the board members. What kind of experience do they have? How relevant is it to what we're looking for? Are there any engineers on the board? I talk about, you know, construction people. Are there people that know about accounting, accountants, CPAs? Do we have any lawyers that can come and give us a hand and you know, add to the council? What has been the track record in the building in regard to administrators? Do we see the same people coming back year after year and the same issues repeating themselves? What kind of achievements have they done, these people? Were they able to do some potent things in the building? For instance, if it's an existing building, have there been renovations? Have there been updates to the corridors? Have they done them in a tasteful manner? And I repeat again, what is the general mood of the board? This is very important. I know of so many boards where they cannot stand one another, the people on the board. They're either there because they're paid per diem for their attendance to meetings, or they're just trying to learn something new. But it's really not a tenable mood and one that you want to necessarily get involved with. Finally, if there's a third-party management firm involved, and this is very important, you have to see which company is it? What qualifications do they have? What experience do they have in managing properties? Which landmark condos are they doing currently? How go on the internet, check them out. You know, what are they saying about them? You know, do they have an interactive mode of communication with the co-owners? Do they have a portal where they can interact and respond to questions and requests and whatnot? These are very, very important elements because it could make or break the mood in the building and the level of service that you're looking for. What track record do they have? What's their reputation in the market? And of course, you should ask, what's included in their mandate? Are these people doing the required checks in the building? Are there building inspections done, you know, every quarter? Are these documented building inspections? Are follow-ups done with the administration? Now you might say, why do I care about all this? Like, do I really care? I'm only buying a condo, please leave me alone. But mark my word, if the building is not maintained well and the bells and whistles are not there, at the end of the day, the money is going to come out of your pocket. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, right? And now I'm going to address to you another way of buying a condominium, and that's from a developer builder. You know, there's so many condominium projects on the market today, some very high end, others mid-range, others very basic, but everybody's got for their money. So you can choose to go and live anywhere and buy a brand new condominium unit, which isn't a bad idea after all, right? But if at all possible, and I say this to you because I buy my units in that manner, try to buy your unit on spec in a few years prior to its delivery, right at the beginning, before they market the unit, right at the VIP, stage, because that's when the developer wants to sell his units and get that 50% mark to be able to get his financing and construct the building, not to forget. So what do? They reduce the prices to be able to get that 50%. And then once that's done, guess what? The prices are hiked up. And then at the very end, there may be a small discount from the hiked up price, but they usually maintain it with the demand that they have currently. So very important to buy your property a few years prior and on spec. Today they have virtual 3D presentations that you can look at. You can see anything and everything you want, your views, the this, the that, everything. Because not to forget, at the date of possession of your property, guess what? Your property will have appreciated in value, I would say between 10 and 20%. Mark my word. Okay, so this is something that I share with you. A lot of people know this, and I've been one who has done it. I've stood in line at 4 o'clock in the morning to be able to be the first to buy a unit that was being marketed among so many others in the line, just to get the first crack at it. And that is really worth your while. Ensure that the developer builder is reputable. This is very, very important. Everybody today has become a builder and a developer, okay? Money is cheap. People are going out there and partnering and building units and selling units. You've got to make sure that the developer you're dealing with is reputable. He's done this before. And projects that you can speak to and that you can also check up on and see how they've treated their buyers. How has their customer service been after purchase? Because don't forget, when you buy your unit, you're going to have all kinds of issues to deal with, minor deficiencies, or perhaps sometimes even bigger. I bought a unit where the windows were all scratched by the cleaners. They had to come and replace 4 or 5 panels of windows. Now imagine if this was a small developer who would have said, well, have a good day, sir. It's what it is. No, they came and replaced them because I only buy from reputable developers and builders that are financially secure and that are not fly-by-night people. Check them out, please, so that it's better to be safe than sorry. Once again, review the market comparables for similar units in the area that you're buying. It's important. What other new developments are there? How do they compare? How are the amenities in regard to the one you're buying? And how does the price compare? Check out current resale. Some of these developers, they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the same project. Go back to phase 1. Find out how much they sold it at back then and how much is it now selling in the market. Has it appreciated? Because when we're always buying a unit, we always say that it's way too expensive. Yet We don't know how it's going to appreciate. But guess what? When you look at what has been sold previously and you compare that to what it's now reselling at, you can have a good idea. Also check out the 2 to 3 year sales of similar properties. Are you really getting a good deal? Or are you buying at a price that's already inflated, that when you decide to sell it in 3 to 5 years, you probably won't be able to get that money anyway, because the developer was wise enough to price his units very high. So that research is very important, very fundamental. Again, and I stress this again, review the market comparables for rentals like for like, even if you don't intend to rent the property, because when time comes to rent it, you'll know how much you can get for it and if it'll cover your costs. Now, if the property will be delivered in a few years, it's important that you ensure that in 3 years' time, okay, the costs to hold that property, okay, are realistic and that you'll be able to afford paying for them. You know, when a developer, and they used to do this, now the law doesn't allow them to do that anymore, right? They used to tell, you know, buyers, oh, our condo fees are 21 cents per square foot per month. Oh yeah, tell me about that. Today, condo fees are more like 60 cents per square foot per month. And they go up to $1 and more, depending on the kind of project you're buying into. So make sure that you have realistic numbers and that you don't go in with false numbers that are going to lead you to the wrong path, and then you'll be short of money, whether you're paying it out of your pocket or whether you're seeking a renter who won't be able to afford to pay that kind of money for your unit, okay? And again, even when you're buying from a developer builder, check out the Condo Act and look at some important elements. Recently, I bought a unit where the Condo Act was so ambiguous in regard to ventilation equipment that was shared among several co-owners. And it said that if that unit were to break, those co-owners will be responsible to pay for it. That was totally, and the notary explained that to me, totally ludicrous. And I told her. And then we went back and we rechecked the wording. And they finally told me, no, that's not the way it's going to be. All the costs will be shared among all the co-owners. How could you manage that kind of split of costs among 200 or 300 co-owners that are sharing, let's say, 60 or 75 ventilation or air conditioning units? Totally. So it's important that you read your Condo Act and you understand it. And perhaps if you don't know enough about construction, have someone look at it for you. It's important. Finally, you know, a lot of people look at the big arch, the McDonald's Arch, and they say, wow, these guys are making a mint from selling hamburgers. But guess what? And those that have watched the movie, they know today that McDonald's makes a lot of money and has been doing that from inception, from its real estate holdings. Because what it essentially does is that it buys and sells its hot properties. And guess what? When it gives out a franchise, in most instances, they own the properties and they collect big rents on it. So more of a reason to own rather than to rent. And my final notes, if you are truly, and I mean truly passionate about real estate, okay, as I have been and still am, get involved on the syndicate board of your condo. Make that effort and learn firsthand the issues involved in the condominium. Work with the board and the third-party manager to resolve the issues and really maintain your asset and keep those costs down as much as possible, always keeping the level of service and reputation of your building. Because not only will this preserve and truly fructify your investment in that complex, right? But it can also, in most instances, be a game changer for you professionally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevork, for that very interesting presentation and very informative. As I can see, the questions are rolling in now, so we're going to get started right away. So the first question we have here is it better to buy a condo that is managed by an external management company or one that is managed by a few co-owners?
Well, I guess from my presentation, you probably already know my answer. There have been some success stories with certain co-ownerships that are managed by co-owners, but I personally believe that there should be a board that should hire a third-party manager that is qualified and has the expertise and all the bells and whistles and the tools required to manage the property in a professional manner. Okay, this cannot be done by just anybody. Property management is a profession. Okay, I recall years ago when I'd gone for an interview and I was a kid, my interviewer said to me, "Oh, it's a glorified janitor's position." Well, I beg to differ. It is not a glorified janitor's position. A property manager wears a number of hats, from accounting to legal to technical to construction, name it, to relations. So I truly believe that you should go with a property management company. And the biggest problem we have today, I must say, just to add, is that unfortunately, for the smaller condominium buildings where you've got 6, 12, 15, 20 units, there aren't any companies that want to handle them. And it's unfortunate, but truly go with a professional management company.
Thank you, Kevork. The next one, somebody has already bought a condo and the atmosphere is not so great. So there's people discarding cigarette butts and there's trash on other people's terraces. There's rampant Airbnb. Is there anything that can be done once you've already bought? And just adding to that, the builder of this particular condo is not very good about fixing deficiencies. It's a daily struggle, and so people want to know how, to deal with that.
Well, I'm reading two questions here. Essentially, you're having internal problems in the condominium in regard to day-to-day operations where people are doing things that they should not be doing. I always stress that the rules and regulations of the building should be adhered to the letter. The administration firm should maintain those rules and regulations and impose fines. And at your General Assembly meeting, you have to bring those things up, and you have to pass motions to enforce those rules and regulations. Okay, and they should be sued for any of these damages. We have this rampant in all buildings. People throwing cigarette butts from the balconies, causing fires, being negligent in their apartments. You know where it really hits you? When it hits your pocket. And so you know what? Put some hefty fines and get those fines imposed by the administration firm or the syndicate. And now as far as the developer builder who may have delivered the property in not so good a shape, as I mentioned, you've got a 5-year window. Hire a professional, multifaceted engineering firm to come in and look at all the facets of the property, prepare a full assessment, okay, against code, and then have that assessment and deficiencies brought forth legally to the developer owner, and make sure that if they do not take action quickly, you've already registered it within that 5-year period, so you've maintained your rights, you will sue, you'll get the work done and sue them. Very important that you consult a law firm that specializes in these kind of things, and there's a few of them out there, and make sure that you preserve your rights.
Okay, thank you. So Kevork, I see a couple of people here that for both condo management firms and for developers, you've talked about, finding reputable sources. So is there a place where people can find reputable condo management firms, as well as how do you check if a developer is reputable? So I'm just going to read this comment because it's funny. They say that Dr. Google is not always so reliable. So is there a reliable resource?
Yes. I think the most reliable resource is that you check out the properties that they are currently managing. You know, the most condominium buildings have Facebook pages where there's comments that are shared among the co-owners in regard to various things that are happening in the building. That is one source that's quite potent. But another is there's an association of condo owners and managers that you can always refer to, and they can be a source. But ultimately, you have to gauge yourself on their previous performance, okay? And you must check up on references, and not only the references that they give you, just like a little bit like an employment interview. When you have an employment interview, they usually give you the references they want you to call. You have to go outside the box and go and visit the properties, check them out, speak to some tenants, some residents, some co-owners in the building, and just see what the vibe is like, okay? And then see if you'd like this company to manage your property for you. What is their communication mode? I stress that. It's so important. Do they have a platform on which you can post your questions and have your service tickets addressed timely? These are things that are so important, and you have to do some research of your own.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next question is about a condo syndicate. So does it make sense for smaller condo syndicates, something with about 14 units, to have an external management, because the cost is very high for even the most basic of services?
And I somewhat agree with you that there's a cost involved, but at the end of the day, you have to find an outfit that's geared to run your property, because if you rely on the co-owners to do so, it'll be done in the manner that they know best. I think that if you can find a formula where you can get an outside firm to do the fundamental elements required of a professional property management firm. Now, when I say fundamental, I mean building inspections, I mean financial statements, I mean follow-ups on all kinds of issues in the building, going out to bids and bringing in, closed bids that would be opened with 2 members of the board, and not for them to open and then bring the price to the syndicate, which I've seen often happen, right? So you need to ensure integrity, you need to ensure professionalism, and you need to get all those facets put together so that that building runs correctly. If it doesn't run well, your investment is not going to fructify, mark my word. But I agree with you. It's difficult today to find, condo management firms that are geared to smaller units. I just hope that some of these firms can find a platform and a way of doing to give affordable management services to the smaller units that are being developed.
Okay, so the next question is about the prices. So these days, the price of a condo and its maintenance is much more than the rent, than renting. Holding a condo for 10 years and selling only estimates will not get more than 8% year over year. Do you still suggest investing in this case?
I think, and this is a personal choice, but I truly believe in real estate that's well managed, and because real estate maintains its value. Now you can say, and I've had this argument from other people close to me that have said, well, I make 8 to 10% return, with my stocks. Fine, if that's the kind of thing you want. But in a diversified portfolio, it'd be good to have real estate, and real estate that has little maintenance. Now, a lot of people will argue that you're better off buying, as opposed to buying a condominium, better off buying a plex and repositioning it. And I've done that already. And yes, you do make much more money, and you could definitely fructify your money more than 8% a year, much, much more than that. However, with that comes the time element, the responsibilities involved, dealing with tenants, at the regie, dealing with older buildings, code conformity issues, name it. So I truly think that a condominium investment has always proven itself a reliable source of income and a nest egg. Because don't forget, once your condominium is paid for, right, the rent will come to you, and you'll only have to pay your taxes and condo fees, right? So it's certainly money coming into your pocket, but it's a personal decision, and it's very personal.
Okay, I'm going to move on to our next question. I'm just keeping watch of the time. It's already 6:30, but Kevork, if you're okay to stay a few extra minutes, just
Not a problem. Not a problem. Go ahead, Lucy.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next question is it better to buy a phase one of a project? I heard that the quality is put into phase one to impress buyers, and then the quality is reduced in subsequent phases. Is that true, or?
Okay. Well, in most instances, that may be thought to be the case. But again, when you buy from a reputable developer builder who's got several phases that are going to be built, they want to keep their reputation, okay? And they're going to be doing whatever they can to impress. And yes, usually the first phase there's a little bit more added to it, but I've seen other phases of projects that have also kept the same level of quality as was promised. Look, you have to see what's being offered and go out there and check and see. But definitely buy in early, buy in at the first phase as much as possible. If you don't make the first phase, go to the second phase. It doesn't matter. But buy in early, a few years prior, as I mentioned. Okay, and then when the time comes to pick up your condo, guess what? You've made money already.
Okay, so we're going to move to the next question. Thank you, Kevork. For buying on spec, don't the builders try and increase the agreed upon price to current market levels before delivery? And does that not seem to erase the value appreciation option of buying on spec years early?
Well, and I had mentioned that as well just before, in that some developers definitely anticipate that. The game is it's not rocket science, right? And they can see that, future values will go up. And so they try to capture it right at the outset as they're selling. But I know, and I've experienced myself personally, that the sales that are done right at the beginning, before it's sent out to the general public, the first few apartments, I would say, when they launched the project, that's when they priced it at the lowest possible level. And then once after that launch, there's another perhaps 7 to 8% increase, and then it goes on and on as the months progress and the sales go up. when it reaches the 50%, then you've pretty much missed the boat. But no, I think that keep the principle of buying on spec and do your competitive shopping. Go out there and see if you're getting price for price, product for product, the best value and the best project.
Okay, so a follow-up question from the same person. Do you recommend having higher condo fees with all expenses within, or a basic condo fee and special assessment fees for extra projects for that year? Some owners prefer the higher condo fees, 12 payments per year. Other owners, especially those hoping to sell within the year, prefer listing a low condo fee. Which one do you think is better?
You know, that's a very good question. And it's funny you say that, because today, when you look at some of the American properties and condominiums to buy, they usually ask you that there is a deferral fee to pay of several thousands of dollars for assessments that haven't been paid by the co-owner. So I tend to believe that we should go in Canada, in particular in Montreal, with a structure where you have your planned maintenance fees for your reserve fund, and you have your budget for the ongoing day-to-day, and those are all captured in your condo fees, and you pay what needs to be paid so that the building, if and when you sell your unit, shows that it's got a healthy reserve fund in line with the scheduled maintenance, life cycle costing of the maintenance, and that's what you should look for. Because anybody that's going to get into a project thinking that they may have to dish out thousands and thousands of dollars on stuff that hasn't been planned for financially, they're going to discount your price. I looked at a project in Laval recently, where in reading the minutes of the previous meetings, I noticed that there was about a $50,000 or $60,000 expense that was to be incurred in the next couple of years, and that there weren't enough funds. Guess what? I had to pay out a share of that, and I already factored it into my price. Didn't make any sense. I just backed away. So no, I don't agree. I think we should be proactive and plan, you know, a course of action that's going to keep the building healthy, financially and otherwise.
Okay, thank you. We have a person here asking why you don't recommend a variable interest rate.
Again, it all depends. Some people are risk averse, others are risk takers. I've bought properties with variable interest rates that have proven to be quite interesting. But then, you know, there's always this question that the bubble will burst at one point. I don't know if it ever will. Hasn't yet, right? Yeah. But again, don't like taking chances. Look at the interest rates. They've gone up already, you know. And I think that as COVID, you know, subsides and, you know, we control it better and the market regains, I think that interest rates may go up. And I don't want to take chances. I'd rather pay, you know, 3/4 percentage point higher or 1/2 percentage point higher, but keep that going for 5 years. And I know what as I mentioned earlier, what my holding costs are. I want to know what this unit is costing me, because that's what's going to come out of my pocket, right? If I can't rent it, or if I don't want to live in it for whatever reason, right? So that's my philosophy, but that's very personal.
Okay, thank you. Kipwork, is there a place where people can access information on condo sales over the past 2 or 3 years?
Unfortunately, you have to go through the MLS. And to be able to go through the MLS, you need a friend who's a broker or an agent, or deal with an agent directly who can provide you that information, because it's important that you verify those things. You know, just give you an example in point. I was looking to buy in the Montreal Canadiens Tower a couple of years ago, and I had an opportunity to buy at a very good price. I did my research. I saw that There were a lot of rentals in the building. I said there were a lot of sales in the building. There were, before the building was even built, imagine, there were all kinds of, issues. And then one thing led to the other. I just backed off. Obviously we all have our levels of comfort, although we should always try to surpass those levels of comfort if we want to achieve. But there are certain things that you don't want to necessarily be exposed to. And I decided not to buy in that tower, rightfully or wrongfully so. That was a decision. Hindsight is always 20/20.
Great, thank you. Just a few more questions left. So if you don't mind, Kevork, I'll just get these couple of questions out. If I buy a condo on spec, how do I protect myself from price escalation clauses?
Okay, so currently I'm unaware of any price escalation clauses in Montreal. In Toronto, yes, there are such clauses. In Ontario. Now, have there been developers that are using such clauses? I haven't heard of, but I stand to be corrected, but I haven't seen that as yet. So you are buying at a price that's established. They can't come back to you and ask for more money.
Okay. All right, I'll just take one last question now, just keeping in watch of the time. How do I ensure that the square footage is not reduced by 15 to 20% when you buy on spec? Is there a legal maximum, and can I include this in the purchase contract?
That's a very, very good question. Very good question. In fact, if you read your contract, by the way, they tell you that there's going to be a difference between the square footage that you saw on spec and what's going to be actually delivered to you. Okay, and I've disputed that. And there's a reasonable, I had a unit where they essentially cut out 10 square feet because they had to pass a duct of some sort. And I asked for compensation, and I was able to get it. And I think it's something that you have to be cognizant of. You're never going to be able to get the same square footage that you bought on. It's mentioned in your contract. There's always going to be a difference. The surveyor will pass by your condominium and will give you the plans as built, and so this should be anticipated. But if it goes over and beyond because something wasn't anticipated beyond a reasonable reduction, then you have to contest.
All right, well, that's going to conclude. We've gone overboard, so I would like to thank everyone here, thank the Chambre of Notaires for making this webinar possible. Thank you, Kevork, for all of you and for this great presentation, and for all of the listeners here tonight. Thank you for your participation. So that's it. This concludes the webinar series. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you to everyone, and good luck. Thank you, Lucy. Bye-bye.